Oh, okay. There you are. How's it going,
Yeah,
brother?
I'm doing fine. How you doing, Bill?
I am doing great here. I almost missed the. I, I've I've got a novel coming out in April. I'm
Yeah.
working on the follow-up, and I got so into this couple of paragraphs of the passage that I wrote earlier that I looked up and it was 1 o'clock.
Ah,
I've got someplace to be at 1 o'clock.
that's right. But actually, I'm on the East Coast. It's 2 o'clock here.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That's right. I sometimes get a little muddled up. We fly here. We just did a record release party at the Iridium in New York City,
Uh-huh.
and we did a record release party 4 days later in San Juan Capistrano in Southern California at the Coach House.
There you go.
Uh, and what was interesting, though, we were very, very brave. We played eight, was it nine new songs from our album?
Uh-huh.
I mean, you go up on stage and people are expecting something. But we spent 5 days rehearsing the album down in Florida at our studio.
Well,
But
it's not
like
a
when
lot
you
of
make,
time, is it?
I'm sorry,
It's not a lot of time, is it?
no, but the thing is, you have to relearn like eight or nine songs you played over the last 2 or 3 years ago.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Um, but it was exciting. It was a challenge, and the audiences were great. The both shows were sold out, so that was good. We were a bit nervous about that, because Foghat's really old.
54 years, brother. You ought to get a gold watch for that at least, right?
Yeah, actually, I just got the phone with my older brother in England, Colin. We were talking about stuff because he co-wrote, or actually wrote one of the songs for us
Hmm.
about Hank Williams.
Yeah, yeah. We're going to talk about that in
Okay,
a little
good.
bit. Um, so let me start here. We're going into the holidays, and I was deeply torn between opening with Chevrolet off of
Okay.
Stone Blue, which is a great song, or your brilliant reading of Jack Frost.
Jack Jack Frost. Isn't it a bit early for Jack Frost?
It is here, and it's a little bit warm here in Chicago.
No,
So
I don't know. You've got your Christmas lights or some kind of lights up there and candles, don't you?
this is our studio. This is my studio. So this is where I paint and write, and the wife writes.
And you become who you really want to be, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
You
Uh,
know, I was just talking to my brother and going on about, well, we were talking about how fortunate we have that both of us got a chance to like follow our dreams in music and had, a fair degree of success. And it was something that was like, but there again, it's not luck. I think it's more good fortune because you have to stick yourself out there and like give
yeah,
it a shot. Whereas luck is something that just floats around in the air and sometimes it sticks to you. It's like fairy dust. But
I've never had any of that fairy dust stick to me. I've always been hard at work and making it happen, like you.
yeah, yeah, I say things like our first record that Dave Edmunds produced. It
Yeah.
was up to that point, when we were in the studio, like producing it ourselves, it was like, the songs were the same, but uh, the production wasn't there, the sounds weren't there. There wasn't somebody to say, "Don't do this, do that."
Hmm.
But when Dave Edmunds got on board making that first album, I tell people now that I know that record would have been nowhere near as successful or as good as it was without Dave Edmunds' input. I know that. Dave Edmunds had this way of like sprinkle all this like fairy magic dust all over it.
Yeah.
And the reason I know this is because he had the night shift at Rockville Studios and we had the day shift. Then sometimes it would cross over. And we'd listen to his stuff. He was mixing songs. And we go, wow, this is really fucking great stuff. And then we would listen to our stuff, and it would sound like, I don't know, it sounds like, kids playing with toys or something, having a good time, but it just wasn't working. So our manager at the time asked Dave if he would produce our record, and he said, "Well,
Mm.
yeah, as soon as I've finished mixing my record, yeah."
Hmm.
And I'm forever grateful to Dave Edmonds. What a genius that man is.
Yeah, he's brilliant, not only as a producer, but as a songwriter and
Right.
musician as well.
Yeah,
But I'm guessing he saw something in you guys. So you guys came out of Savoy Brown, and with kind of a unique sound at the time. It was definitely a departure from Kim and Savoy Brown. But I'm sure he saw something in what you guys were doing and bought into that dream, right?
we no, no, we we got on real well. I mean, I loved all his stuff, and like
Yeah.
rock and roller. He's a blueser,
Yep.
as were myself, Lonesome Dave and Rob Price. So it was, yeah, that wasn't hard at all. And what I loved, in fact, we all loved working with Dave, and vice versa. We got on really well. We had a good time,
Hmm.
and I remember that there was never any. It was like we play something, and Dave would say, "That's really good. Keep that one." And then we go, "All right." And no, it was a lot of fun. We pretty much run out of money. All the money that we given was like to pay for Dave, pay for the studios and
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
But what were we living on? Cornflake sandwiches, I think. But it was also the studio was actually part of a working dairy farm,
Yeah.
so we had fresh milk every day.
Very good. It goes great with cornflakes.
Yeah, and bread sandwiches, cornflake sandwiches. It was a good time. It was a really good
So
time.
what was that conversation when between you and the band when you decided that you were going to split from Savoy Brown? How did that conversation begin?
Um, Harry Simmons, we had a meeting with Harry Simmons, the manager, and
Yeah,
Kim.
yeah,
They fired Tony Stevens.
right.
Uh, they said that Dave and I could stay around if we wanted to.
Uh-huh.
Dave and I went back to my room. We were in San Francisco at the time, and Dave wrote Fools Hall of Fame, and I had my practice pads, and we played that. The
Hmm.
next morning, Dave and myself met with Harry Simmons, the manager, and said, "Look, we'll stay around for as long as Kim wants us to, until he puts a new band together.
Hmm.
But we just feel it's time for a change." And
But Kim was
Kim,
okay with that, right? Harry wasn't.
I'm sorry,
Kim was all right with you guys leaving the band to form your own band, but Harry wasn't.
Harry wasn't exactly. No, Kim was fine. Um, and we were fine to stay with Kim until he had a new band. In fact, when we go back to England, myself and Dave and Tony were working on some songs with Kim in the studio.
Hmm.
But um, sometimes you just have to sort of say it's time for a change. And then I reconnected with Kim in '76.
Hmm.
He did a show out here out on Long Island at Stony Brook University.
Yeah.
We spent some time together. Then about 10 years ago, and we bump into each other, across the country from time to time.
Hmm.
About 10 years ago, um, our manager, Linda, got Savoy Brown on the same agency as us,
Okay.
Paradise Artists. And so that meant we got chances to play together. In fact, we did a couple at the Arcada
Hmm.
with Kim.
Yeah.
And it was great. We just reconnected. I get up and play with them, two drummers, and Kim will get up and play with Foghat. It was good. And then
Man.
I invited Kim to play on our previous album, Under the Influence,
Uh-huh.
and he played on about 4 songs, as did Scott Holt, a new lead singer and guitar player.
Hmm.
And after we finished. Tom Hambridge produced the last record, Under the Influence, and Kim said to me, we were hanging out after we finished all the sessions, and he said, I'd really like to write some songs for Foghat. I said, that would be great, Kim.
Yeah.
Guitar on him, and he said, okay, Roger, with a wry smile. Uh, Unfortunately, Kim passed away last Christmas.
Yeah.
That he'd sent me 4 songs, and they were really good, but they obviously needed. It was just him singing, playing guitar, and like to a click track or something. And we did 3 of them on the new album on Sonic Mojo. So I was really happy with the way they turned out. And it felt really good to have Kim's songs there. I mean, Brian Bassett was a huge fan of Kim Simmons playing, as was Scott Holt. Scott Holt even had met with Kim a number of times, and they'd even talked about playing together.
Wow.
So it was. There's a little bit of magic in the air with the songs that Kim wrote. So yeah, it felt really good. In fact, this whole record feels really good. The way it sounds and the way it feels. I'm really. I think I've always been happy with the stuff we do, but this record, I think, is a little bit special.
There's some great stuff on the record, and we're going to talk about it in a bit. I wanted to. So, Savoy Brown was always really kind of, there you go, Sonic Mojo, man. It's has always been Kim's vehicle.
Yeah.
And I sort of feel that the split between you and what would become Foghat, Tony and Dave, and you was kind of natural. It was kind of symbiotic, right?
Yeah, like I said, Kim and I don't think Kim and I ever had a crossword.
That's
Never.
great.
I mean,
Yeah.
we always got on really well. I know that Dave and Kim, though Dave didn't talk a lot, but they both had this passion for blues music and all things blues. Dave was a walking, talking encyclopedia about blues and music. Actually, I've said this a couple of times recently, but Lonesome Dave was a closet drummer.
I've heard that.
Well, because he knew every drummer that played on every record.
Yeah.
I mean, he would inform me, he'd say, quick story. We had a couple of days off in Chicago, and this is in the mid-70s. Dave and
I think I saw you then.
Yeah, we go out to the clubs and stuff. We went to this one club, Mother Blues.
Oh yeah.
We walk in there, and we pay our $3. I think it was $3. I go to the bar, get Dave a glass of wine. I had a cognac, and I come back. Dave's standing there looking at the stage, just staring at it like. And I said, "What's up?" He said, Dave says, "Do you know who that is playing drums up there?" I said, "No, who is that, Dave?" He said, "That's Freddie Below." Now, of course, I know who Freddie Below was. I mean, session man at Chess Records, played on all that classic stuff that I learned to play to. And I said, wow. So Dave and I make our way over there, and the band's taking a break. And we sort of go up and talk to him. Freddie did all this basically he was a jazz drummer, but he played all this really cool stuff. With his right hand, he would play on the floor, tom-tom, on the side of the drum. So he would play with the bass drum, right? Anyway, and he looks at us and we're in awe because we're standing next to one of our heroes. And Freddie says, "You guys want to play?" Yeah. So he goes off to the bar, and Dave and I played for the next hour.
Wow. Well, I mean, in a 4-man band, it's essential that that each member is really tuned in to their counterparts, right?
Yeah.
Especially for a band like Foghat.
Yeah. Right from the very beginning, when I first started joining the band when I was 16, the bass player was a best friend like in school, Dave Hutchins. He'd been playing since he was like 10 years old. I didn't start until I was 12 or 13. And Ray Dorset had been playing since he was 9 or 10 years old, and he was a singer in the first band I was in. So I always played with great players. When I joined Savoy Brown, that was like there was some real magic in the air then. Chris Jordan, fantastic writer, and Kim was just starting to come into his own as a guitar player. Yeah. He was listening to anybody and everybody, and he was just soaking it up. Yeah. And I get into this band, and I'm going, okay, don't fuck it up. And it was, and Kim and I never had a crossword. The only time it was a little dip because everything was one take then. We'd rehearse the various rehearsal rooms around London. Then when we were ready, we would go in. Mike Vernon was the producer. Roy Thomas Baker, or Roy Baker he was then, was the engineer. So the sounds were great in the room. I mean, I didn't do anything to my drums. They just put microphones on it, and I just had to play. I knew how to tune a drum.
But go ahead.
And there was one song we were doing, "You Need Love," Willie Dixon song, of course. There would be no rock and roll if it wasn't for Willie Dixon.
I agree.
So we were doing this song, which was like kind of a rave up kind of thing, drum solos and bass solos in it. Come to my part, sort of play the drum solo, and I drop a drumstick. Clunk. I knew it was only one take. So Kim comes over to me and he says, you know, Rog, if we don't get it right next time, the song's not going on the album. Nothing like some pressure.
Yeah, a little bit.
What was that, 19, maybe 20, I don't know.
Yeah.
I didn't drop the drumstick next time, but my drumming solos have improved. But actually my playing overall has improved somewhat. But my passion has always been for, blues and early rock and roll. That's what I listen to, like Earl Palmer, all that early sort of stuff from New Orleans, Little Richard. It was, that's what I listened to. Francis Clay, who I thought was Muddy's greatest drummer. When you listen to, you probably heard it like Muddy Waters at Newport.
Yeah.
I think that is like the most incredible. When I heard that record, I said, this is it. And I sat down and listened to it and tried to play to it. I'd had a couple of like 6-inch speakers either side of my head that was connected to a Grundig tape player when I was 15, I think, and or 16. Anyway, and I'd listen to it and I couldn't play like that. But the attitude I loved, and everything. There was always a swing in everything that was played. The same with Freddie Below, and Earl Palmer. They, even if it was like a 4/4 feel, it was always shuffle going through it. It was never that. It was like that.
Yeah. Well, that was built into from the origins of New Orleans blues, especially.
Right. And I knew that was something that you had to sort of master, or at least own to some degree yourself. And I listened to other drummers, but it was music for me. It was always about the music. It was songs, the way the band played. That I wanted to play like that in a band. Like drummers, you sit in a room and you're banging around and like practicing your rudiments, but where you learn how to play is with a band.
Yeah.
A great bass player, a great singer, a great guitar player. And I played with all those.
You played with all of them
growing up. So I was fortunate there. I always played with great musicians. So I think that helps drag you along.
I have to say one of my all-time favorite songs is Stone Blue. And boy, that slide by Rod Price where he plays over the second pickup is just astounding.
Rob was totally unique. I mean, obviously he was a huge Duane Allman fan. Who wasn't? I remember when we were putting the band together, we had the Fillmore East record on every morning. Them and the Beatles, actually. I was also a big Stones fan as well,
Uh-huh.
but it was as the Stones were like, American music fans. It was all about the blues and rock and roll for them too.
Hmm.
Um, so Rob was brilliant. When we were doing Stone Blue, I knew there was some magic in the song, and I remember after we actually got the track down, we rehearsed it quite a bit trying to find out where it was. And I remember our manager at the time saying to me, it's too fast. And I said, it's a rock and roll song. And Craig McGregor was absolutely brilliant to play with. He and I were like, we were brothers by different mothers. And
All right.
I loved him like a brother. And like, as brothers will sometimes be, we knocked heads once or twice
Mhm.
about how things should go. But before we ever went to shows, Craig and I would always go to a room. We would listen to some music, usually Little Feat, or I seem to remember Craig really liked the Brothers Johnson, the great bass player. But we
Yeah.
would always like listen to music before we left our hotel rooms and took the limo to the next gig. It was like a thing, um, because bass players and drummers, you gotta like lock it up.
Yeah.
You got.
Yeah.
What did Craig say to me one time?
You're the backbone of the music.
Well, yeah, Craig put it one way, but rather succinctly, I thought. He said, Rog, you and I laid down the road for them to travel on. And
Yes.
I,
Yeah, that's
uh,
brilliant.
and it's quite poignant, really, for a bass player. Oh, that was a terrible thing to say, wasn't it?
We should let 20 minutes in here. We should let people know that Foghat will be performing in St.
Hold on, you've
Charles.
gone.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. Linda had her Bluetooth on. It's
Okay.
going to break up even when you go out there, Linda.
Foghat will be performing in St. Charles at the
Actually,
Arcadic Theater.
Linda told me she turned her Bluetooth off, but she hadn't.
Okay. All right.
I hear you now. We're back. We're back on.
There you go. There you go. I was just saying that Foghat will be performing at St. Charles in St. Charles at the Arcada Theater with my friend Ron Onesti for an 8 p.m. show on Saturday, December 2nd. Foghat released its 17th solo album, Sonic Mojo, a very strong album, which we'll talk about in more detail with Roger Earl in just a little bit. The website is Foghat Official at foghat.com, as well as on Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and apparently on wine bottles everywhere. You're becoming more than a classic icon, brother. You're an empire with your own wine label, right?
It's hardly an empire. I drink quite a lot. No, I don't drink as much as I ought to.
I don't think you can drink enough of good wine.
No, that was something that happened back in 2005,
Yeah.
2006. Playing on the west coast of California. We did 2 days at the Mid California State Fair. Both
Hmm.
shows sold out,
Hmm.
and a winemaker came to see us, and he emailed our manager Linda and said in the email, Foghat lends itself to a great name for wine. Would you be interested in making wine? I started giggling,
Hmm.
licking my lips, and Linda said, that's just another job for your manager to take care of. But yeah, we have our own wine. We have a 2013 Pinot Noir from the Central Coast of California, and we have a 2014 Chardonnay from
Hmm.
the Central Coast of California.
The folks can get at foghat.com
Yes,
and a
Foghat.
signed copy, even
Yeah,
a signed label.
yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll sign it. I think there's some left.
Yeah, it says actually the prices are pretty excellent. But it's I think $15 or $16 for a bottle, and $30 for a signed label.
I have no knowledge of that. I have nothing to do with that. I just play the drums in this band and make sure that everything's working right.
Part of my research, the wife and I love wine, and
Okay.
so I saw that and had to find out more.
Actually, both the wines are delicious.
Yeah,
A 2014 Chardonnay may appear to be a little long in the tooth, but it's actually a beautiful, rich Chardonnay.
yeah.
The 2013 Pinot Noir, in fact, I just drank half a bottle for lunch.
Good.
Well, the holidays are coming up. We're gonna celebrate. I won't go into that, but we're going to celebrate Thanksgiving. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
nice, nice.
and I am thoroughly grateful for how things have turned out, and I love my adopted home. This is the land of music. This is where it all came from.
Yeah, yeah.
Jazz, bebop, rock and roll,
Country,
country,
yeah,
uh, mm, religious music, gospel music, of
yeah,
course, gospel music. I mean, how many fantastic singers and how much fantastic music has come out from people that grew up in a church?
yeah,
Uh,
indeed.
yeah, this is the land of music, and America has given music to the world. This
Hmm.
wonderful joining of all those wonderful ideas, this wonderful melting pot of ideas and music. No other country in the world is like this. I think they all take. Think they take the leadership from here. Of course, you've got people all over the world like singing stuff, but this country gave music to the world and inspires even to this day.
Yes,
Music
yeah.
coming up inspires people all over the world to make music, and
I've got
that's I
I've
live
got
here.
two quick stories to support you on that one. There's a blues man here in Chicago, Johnny Bergen, who's a dear friend. Put out a number of albums, but he recently did an album with Japanese blues musicians, and he does a
Yeah.
podcast where he talks
What
to
am I
blues
saying?
musicians.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
he talks to blues musicians all over the world. My I met my wife in Sarajevo during the siege. Uh,
Okay.
and her grandmother was a film producer for Yadron Films. She loved American gospel music. Just
What's the about
so,
it? No, I mean it's joyful music.
yes,
The blues
yeah.
can also be joyful, happy, even though it's about often a sadder subject. But I mean, American gospel music, it's if you're going to have a God, that's the way to
There's a
sing to.
reason they call it soul
Yeah, yeah.
because it
Soul
comes
music, right?
directly from the soul.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I was I had the pleasure of catching you at Alpine Valley in the late '70s or early '80s. A little muddled right now, the exact time. Me and three other guys were stuffed into my '69 Le Mans, which was destroyed in an accident. Not
Yeah.
and this trip ended up in my first novel. Um, but we were swilling pints of Jack Daniels 2 hours from the to
Oh,
the
no, that's
Alpine Valley and 2 hours
criminal.
back and through the
Drinking and
whole
driving.
a trip we should not have survived, by the way.
No.
So I'm a little bit familiar with your music. Um, but you guys put on a brilliant show. You're a live band. You've always been a live band. I think that's one of the magical ingredients in Foghat albums, studio albums, is they have that live feel. And I know Dave Edmunds contributed to that on the first album, but you guys carried that through every single album, which is a testimony to the band.
But with every record that we've made, um, not every song was made like with the four musicians in the room, two guitars, bass, drums, and singing. But a number of them were. Or often what we would do is like we would make sure there was enough separation. Um, this band has always been what's the word? Organic. We
Yeah.
always played together. We always played in the room. It was like, and before we ever go out and play on the road, we uh always rehearsed.
Hmm.
It was never like, well, let's do that. It was never any like sloppiness. And also, uh, there's a wonderful line that Dave used to come up with, and it sort of personified what we were about. He would shout to the audience after a song or two. He'd say, "Do we have permission to jam?" Like, the song would start up in the studio and come out on a record.
That's
It's
that
like
blues sensibility, man.
it is. then it would be 7 or 7.5. Um, you know, making music is a real joyous thing.
Yeah.
That has carried over today with our current band. These
Yeah.
guys are just phenomenal. Brian Bassett's been with us, what, 27 years? He
Uh-huh.
played with Lonesome Dave and Rob Price.
Hmm.
Um, they did a couple of tours together.
Rodney
Scott Holt
Quinn.
has been
Yeah.
around since with us in some one way or another. I met Scott in 2014, and he's worked on like numerous songs that we put out and played stuff with us. It was a stand-in for Charlie Hune a couple of times when
Hmm.
Charlie played shows. Um, and Rodney O'Quinn that was actually handpicked by Craig McGregor.
Yeah.
Craig called when Craig became ill, he had lung cancer.
Hmm.
Uh, we had
Oh,
four different we had four different bass players. Because I said to Craig, look, you tell me when you can't play bass anymore, and then we'll settle on a bass player. But until then, as far as I'm concerned, you're the bass player in this band. And sometimes he would call me up. We had to have a show out in California. We were playing with Deep Purple, and
uh-huh.
he said, "Hey, Rog, I think I'd like to do the show out in California." I said, "The one with Deep Purple." He said, "Yeah, yeah, that one." We were playing with ZZ Top. He'd say, "You know that show you're doing out in the Midwest with ZZ? Yeah, uh, I think I can do that one." Um, yeah, I love Craig McGregor. He was my brother by a different mother.
There you. So let me ask you this. There's been a single thread through all those years and all those albums of Foghat, through the ups and downs, and that was the drummer, you, Roger Earl. How does and through multiple the multiple generations of the band, guitar players and bass players. Um, so you've become not only the shepherd of the brand, but of the sound, right?
um, well, somebody's got to do it. Even in early days, after we left Savoy Brown, I mean, I wasn't other than being the drummer in Savoy Brown. It was really cool for me because I was only 19, I think, when I joined the band, but I was allowed to do, Chris Jordan would play a song at the piano on the guitar, or Kim would play something, and I just played the drums to what they were playing.
Hmm.
And I don't ever recall them ever saying anything other than "it was good, Rog." You know, uh, it was like I got on. I mean, I have this thing. Being a drummer, it's okay sitting on, practicing and stuff, but it gets boring.
Hmm.
Playing with a band, making music, creating music, jamming. That's what it's all about. And I've been fortunate that I've always played with great people, and yeah, it was. What was the question again? What was the question?
Well, so the question was, um, you've had to shepherd the band uh, for sound and direction. Again, we said, the band which currently features um, uh, you and Brian Bassett, Rodney O'Quinn, and Scott Holt, is every bit as powerful and talented, not only in playing but in their songwriting abilities as well. Um, but that that could lead the band in a number of directions, but you guys have always stayed true to your blues roots, and even with the addition of a country sort of sound on the new record, that essence is still there.
I have to put my hand up for this one.
Yes, sir.
I'm a Johnny Cash fan. I
Good
grew
man.
up.
Good
I
man.
I grew up listening to Johnny Cash.
Yeah.
My older brother Colin bought all the early Sun records. I was the only 12-year-old kid in Southwest London singing Johnny Cash songs on his way riding his bike to school. Oh, she loves you, big river boy. Well,
I grew
baby,
up on Folsom City Blues, brother.
I still think about Katie too. How's the water, Papa? 4 feet high and rising. I mean, even though he didn't have a drummer, there was always this fantastic rhythm
Yeah.
for his songs.
Yeah.
But for me, there was stories. Johnny Cash told stories.
Yeah.
Um, and that I think that's what got me as a kid.
Hmm.
I heard stories and I heard rhythm. The great thing about Sun Records for me was early Elvis Presley. That was probably the greatest band that ever came down the pipe.
Hmm.
Early Elvis Presley, the stuff that Elvis is singing and the band that he had, J.D. Fontana, the bass and the guitar, and it was just incredible.
So those are all guitar
That's
players.
what I grew
How
up
did
listening.
those are all guitar players? How did Roger Earl um, pick up the drums? I know your parents played piano, and I think you learned on piano, which is essentially a percussion instrument. But what led you to the drums?
They're louder than the piano.
Yes, sir. Yes, they are.
I don't know. I was always banging on plates with knives and forks and
Okay.
spoons, ruining mum's good china, lampshades on a lamp. That would be a symbol.
Uh,
Um,
I'm sure she appreciated that.
yeah, actually, my parents were very, in the words, understanding. There was always music in our house anyway. Dad, there was always music. We had always had the radio on, the record player, or we had a tape player as well. We used to tape stuff off the radio. That's how I learned to play. I had a Grundig tape player and
Hmm.
had like 6-inch speakers either side of my head, and I just played the music. Um, it was My parents are really cool. They loved music. They grew up in the East End of London. That's where they came from.
Hmm.
We settled in Southwest London in Hounslow, and my dad took me to see Jerry Lee Lewis when I was 12 years old. Jerry Lee would come over. It was 1960, somewhere around there, and that was it. Um,
Yeah.
uh, I mean, I'd already listened to Jerry Lee's first album and Little Richard and
Hmm.
Johnny Cash, and but seeing Jerry Lee Lewis live, though I couldn't hear him, they just probably had a couple of vox columns either side of the stage. There was Jerry Lee had some of that real magic in the way he played, the way his personality. He was so it was brilliant, and I was hooked. My mother said it addled my brain.
But it certainly paid the bills.
Yeah, not for a long time. No,
Yeah.
I gave I gave up my job as a commercial artist. I was earning
Yeah.
really good money, when I joined Savoy Brown. So no, the thing is, I think with musicians, if you really want to play, um, and I was good as a commercial artist.
Mhm.
Uh, I earned really decent money and good people that I work with as well.
Do you
But
still do? Do you still do visual art?
no, I don't do any of that.
No.
Occasionally, I'll draw something for the grandchildren or something,
Okay.
a picture and make them laugh.
Hmm.
But actually, no, I did the artwork for the Family Jewels album. I had to do overlays and all sorts of stuff the old
Okay.
way.
Okay.
Um, we have a manager who does all the artwork now. Hold on a second.
Yeah.
Hold on a second.
You
Story.
know, I have to say, I really miss liner notes.
You got it on this one. There's
That's
stories in there, not about just the band, but about people who work with us, where we've been, where we want to go. It's and pictures. I remember like when I would look at albums that had pictures, and notes. It would be I would
yeah.
read them over and over again. Really,
Yeah.
um, I I heard about Chicago. I went there eventually. I
Hmm.
wanted to go to Chicago, New Orleans. I wanted to go to New Orleans.
Hmm.
That's the land of dreams. There's magic down there, and I got there. And kid growing up in London, I mean, I made my dreams come true. But you
Yes,
have to
sir.
be brave. Sometimes you have to be brave. Sometimes you go.
So let me take you down a little path here, because this stood out to me, and I always wondered about it. The last album that you guys recorded in the '80s was Zigzag Walk, 1982, I think.
Yeah,
Um, which was almost a rockabilly album, a different sound than your traditional or your iconic straight ahead blues infused rock, right? Um,
yeah.
did you think that that was it for the band? I think Rod left in 1980, shortly before the album came out, right?
Rod left after we did the Boogie Motel album.
Okay.
That was the last record he played on.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know what? Dave was the lead singer in the band and the main writer, and
yeah.
I had no problem playing rockabilly tunes. Uh,
Okay.
you know, back in 1969 or 1970,
Uh-huh.
we, um, we were doing, we were working for, we were doing an album, forget which album we were doing for Savoy Brown, with Mike Vernon, and Roy Baker was the engineer.
Yeah.
And Kim and Chris Jordan and our producer went out to have lunch, and myself and Dave and Tony Stevens stayed behind.
Hmm.
So what do? We play. We're playing, you know, rockabilly tunes, and uh, just played for about an hour and a half, nearly 2 hours, and then Mike Vernon came back, and Roy Baker, the engineer, recorded it, and the producer said, "Wow, this is really good." And my brother Colin played piano on it, and the following day they all went out to lunch again, and Roy Baker recorded our lunchtime sessions, and it came out in England as Warren Phillips and the Rockets. That was just a small part of our music. That's part of Americana, if you will.
Hmm. Yep.
And yeah, um, maybe Dave lost his writing partner. Maybe we were going through, wanted to do our rockabilly thing. I don't know. It was just, you just play, you play music that you're having fun with. And yeah, it wasn't a big seller. I think it sold about 150 or 200,000. Actually, by today's standards, that's quite a lot, isn't it?
But so maybe instead of looking at it as a deviation from your sound, more of an exploration uh of the genre, right?
Well, uh, Foghat was all those things.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
know, we were certainly myself and Dave were like fans of everything, all American music, Americana, for want for a better word.
yeah,
Rock and
yeah.
roll, jazz, even. Not that we were particularly well versed in that, but I
Hmm.
think the number of songs we played, like with Kim and early Savoy Brown, there was a lot of jazz influence on that. In fact,
Hmm.
one of the things that Kim said to me one time,
That's really the essence behind behind
there
jamming.
was one song that we played. It was called Sunday Night, I think, or something, or Sunday Morning.
Uh-huh.
It was an instrumental, but it was a jazz thing, but it was a swing that, and like, and then I also played percussion on the break, and Kim said that was one of the best songs he thought that we ever did, and I and he told me this about 10 years ago when we were talking about it, and I'm going, I didn't even remember the song, and then I listened to it. I have the record here, and I went, wow, I did, and it was like, and it's just really swing, like jazz thing, and Kim sort of playing his Kenny Burrell kind of things. He was starting to get into like this intricate stuff, and it was really good. You're like that when you're kids. He was what, 19 or 20 who was doing this, and then there's a break, and then I played the drums and I put congas and maracas and stuff afterwards. It was sometimes you just have to like step outside and like have a go at stuff and play different things. If it's not working, it doesn't go on the record. And if the producer says, we'll keep that, it goes on the record. And that's what happened
Yeah.
with
But
all that.
you just did a rocking cruise with with Leo Sayer. And I did a couple of shows with him, and one of the things that he told me was that his big hit, "You Make Me Feel Like Dancing," was a complete mistake. He was jamming in the studio, and the engineer just happened to hit record. It was 2 weeks later, and he said, cut this here, add a chorus here, and that's your hit, and that became his huge hit.
Yeah, yeah. There's magic in music,
Yep, yep.
That's
Magic in moments.
that's the beauty of it. That's the real joy that I get out about making music, and like, especially with the current band. I mean, I know how fortunate I am to play with Scott Holt. I mean, like I said, I've known him since about 2014,
Hmm.
2015.
Hmm.
But playing with him it's just a gas. We have so much fun. In fact, some of the songs that actually got on the record, we've forgotten we recorded. We've
Yeah.
forgotten. Brian found them like we've been recording them over a 3 or 4 year period. It wasn't until the last couple of years that we knuckled down and started writing and stuff. And then
Hmm.
Brian would go through his collection of jams, and all of a sudden he'd go. And in fact, I said, "Am I playing drums on that?" And said, like there was a BB King song, "She's Dynamite." I didn't
Yeah.
remember recording it. It was just myself and Scott. And Brian put bass on it at the time, but we'd forgotten about it. And then when we're going through all the stuff, when we're putting the album together, it was like there was probably 7 or 8 songs that we didn't put on the record. We just went, you have. It's like your favorite child. I have 3 daughters, so they're all my favorite. But how do you get rid of one and not the others? So you pick your favorites on as far as music goes, and that's what we try to do on this record. And I personally, I don't usually say things like that. I think we got it right. It covers who this band is, what
Yeah.
up to play, what sort of music we play. Um, there's only one really fast rock and roll song on there. I Don't Appreciate You.
Hmm.
Scott describes it when we play it on stage as the most polite FU song ever written.
um, I wanted to cover a little bit of the gap between Zigzag Walk and Return of the Boogeymen, um, which was released in 1994. It's a great powerhouse album, and saw the original members unite. There you go, man. Um,
We're going to release it sometime either this year or next year. Hopefully, on vinyl as well.
oh, great. You were pounding
Yeah.
those skins like you had a vendetta against the songs. And I'm thinking of songs like "Jump That Train," but man, you were you were out of the box on that one, bro.
Well, I was working with my favorite producer and
Yeah.
one of my best friends. Nick Jameson is an absolute genius when it comes to production and as a musician. I've said this many times, and I'll say it again. I probably learned more from working and knowing Nick Jameson as an individual
Hmm.
more than any other person I've met and played with. And um, he was terrific. Rod struggled a little bit on the record. Dave was ripping. He was ready to do this. We'd actually had a year and a half off from playing after we got the original band back together, which was a bit difficult, from a working musician point of view. But I had some personal things I had to take care of with my mother and father back in England, and it worked. And Dave sent me a bunch of songs on a cassette, so I mean, I knew where we were sort of headed. And you're right, and I think Dave actually came up with some terrific songs on that record.
Yeah.
Jump That Train was that was just one take as well. We were struggling with it in the studio. Nick Jameson went out. I was using 26-inch bass drums. Nick Jameson went out and detuned my bass drum, so took all the padding out. There
Hmm.
was a single hole in the middle. There were 26-inch bass drums. I had 2, and he took all the padding out and detuned them so they'd be like boom. You hear it, right? And I said, okay, but he didn't mic up my left bass drum. So when I started playing double bass drums, It was a button, and it had this like off
Okay.
count
Okay.
kind of. But I thought it added to the magic. Nick said, "Why didn't you tell me you were going to play the other bass drum?" I said, "Well, but that's again, that's like part of the beauty."
The energy comes through on that album so strongly. It's like you're making up for the last 12 years.
But yeah, prior to that, we've been working on the song. We hadn't like we were trying to find the tempo. You know, I would start and like when you're working on new material, like there's this thing going on until you like nail it.
Yeah.
And you know, I was playing to a click to start off with once everybody said this, and it just wasn't working. It was like it wasn't that I or anybody else was like off. It just wasn't working. Again, Foghat was always a very organic band. It's like, and eventually there was just the four of us in the room.
Mhm.
Dave sang on microphone. It was just the band playing. Nick Jamieson said, "Just go out and fucking play the song." And, that's what we did, and that was the take.
So let's spend a couple of minutes here before we go on the new album because I think there you go, Sonic Mojo. Um, this album has, like all of your previous albums, has a great live feel. Um, Testament to not only you but the band as well. You've always been a live band.
Yeah,
What can folks expect to hear on this tour, man?
actually, I think I mentioned earlier we did two record release parties, and it's
Yeah.
pretty brave of a band that you're playing to a sold out. Yeah, it's a club. It's like the club in New York, the Iridium, I think holds 160 people. That was sold out.
Uh-huh.
Following Friday, we played in LA at the Coach House, 500 people. That was sold out.
Sold out. Yeah.
And we've got like 9 new songs in the set. I
Yeah.
mean,
Wow. Wow.
you've got to be brave to do that. But
And so you said that when Hank Williams came to town was a song that was written by your brother.
you
How
wrote the words,
our
yes.
audiences, our Foghat audiences reacting to that song?
We didn't play it.
Oh, really?
No,
Oh, it's a great song.
we didn't. We didn't play that, and we didn't play the Chuck Berry song. We played all the others though. Uh,
Uh-huh.
I don't know why. It was just like we had an hour and right. No, we already did 8 from the record,
Okay.
and we had an hour and 15 minutes. We actually played nearly an hour and a half.
Uh-huh.
Uh, so we had to take something out. That was one of them that didn't make the cut. But the recording of it, I'm really happy with. My
Yeah.
brother wrote the lyrics, and we put the music to it. And I love, and Scott Holt was absolutely brilliant on that. But it was, I thought it was pretty brave just to go to a place and play basically 90% of the songs you're playing that night. It's all new music. But yeah, the
Yeah.
show in California at the Coach House was really cool because they were kind. They said, you know, you can play at least an hour and a half. You don't have to play an hour and 15 minutes. So we uh, we got to jam. We hadn't played Honey Hush in years. We hadn't played that funky music. Brian was the guitar player,
Yeah,
and
yeah, and Wild Cherry.
so
Yeah.
we played that as well. That's always fun. Play that funky music and slow ride.
Okay.
Doesn't get a lot better at the end of a set.
It doesn't. No, it doesn't indeed.
It's
She's
rock
a
and
little bit
roll.
of everything. One of the singles off of Sonic Mojo. Um, Kim Simmons and Lonesome Dave co-wrote several of the songs on this album, right?
No, it just Kim.
Just Kim? Okay.
Kim. After we finished our previous album, where Kim sat in on Under the Influence,
Right.
he wanted to write some songs. He sent me 4 songs. We recorded 3 of them. It was just basically the songs he sent had a click track, just his guitar and singing, and I loved them. I think we did them justice.
Hmm.
She's a little bit of everything. It's probably my favorite on the album. I claim that Kim wrote it about his beautiful wife.
Okay.
Uh, I like saying that because it always embarrasses us. uh, Driving On, which is a classic, like
That's
moody,
classic.
yeah, about on the road trying to get home to the one you love because, well, we can't say that. Are children listening to this? No. And the other one we did was Time Slips Away, and I think
Uh-huh.
Scott Holt put it rather succinctly. It was like Kim wrote that when knew he was facing the end of his life, and it was and it was away, and he put it into words, and that was a tough one for us to make because we weren't sure how to play it. And Scott spent a lot of time with the words and like the cadence of the words,
Uh-huh.
the what level you're actually going to sing that song at, and how you have to really emote with something like that because
Yes, sir.
him wrote a personal song, and Scott saw it as that, and
Mhm.
I did it as when I was playing it. We played it. It was just myself and Scott when we actually played the song. Um, Rodney put his bass on afterwards because we both wanted to get the feel of the song, the vocal, Scott's vocal and drums. It was Scott's vocal, guitar, and drums. That's how we did that song.
Yeah, yeah.
And then we put the bass on afterwards. And Brian Bassett, of course, was running the board, and he put
Mhm.
his guitar on after we'd finished it. But yeah, I'm grateful to Kim Simmons not only because he gave me my
You guys
first
are
children.
showing no signs of slowing down, man.
Yeah, he was a brilliant blues guitar player. He said to me, well, he wanted to be remembered as a blues guitarist.
Oh, that's
And,
nice.
and he did. He stayed faithful to his uh, early uh, the music that moved him,
Yeah.
and he absorbed that. And
You said in
Kim,
another interview that he really loved music.
yeah, he was a beautiful man. He
Yeah.
really was. He was very well read, really bright, kind of introvert in some ways, but he and I think, used to bring the best out of each other. We would often laugh a lot, and yeah, I miss him, and I'm grateful that he wrote those songs for us because I really think they're the pièce de résistance on this album, and it means a lot to me that he
Yeah.
though he couldn't play on it, his spirit is in there.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I'm gonna end this piece with driving on, which I think is fits beautifully in the lexicon of classics by Foghat. Um, you also mentioned ZZ Top, and is that opening an homage to ZZ Top's Lagrange?
Um, of course it's that, but you see, these ZZ Top, where did they get it from? Now let's see where they got it from. Where do we think they got it from? Uh,
I'm gonna draw a blank on this one and defer to the expert over there.
but yeah, there's a lot of early blues songs would have the drummer either playing on the rim or playing on
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
the bottom, so
yeah.
that's where that comes from. But yes, ZZ Top, one of my favorite bands. I think Billy Gibbons is one of the greatest guitar players to ever come down the pike, and
Yeah.
the music that band has made. One of the things I love about ZZ Top is they always managed, even though some of the songs were like kind of sad and bluesy and stuff,
Uh-huh.
humor. They would inject humor. If you listen to those lyrics, it's like it's funny. And also, I remember reading an article about they were talking about they often have two or three sets of lyrics for a song,
Uh-huh.
and I mean that just shows you how prolific that band was. And they also they nailed they nailed that their they nailed that band down, the way they played, the way they sounded.
Hmm.
I've had the pleasure of playing with them numerous times over the years. In fact, last year we did some shows with them, and I got to hang out with Billy Gibbons and talk to him about stuff. He's always been kind about saying kind stuff about Foghat too, but that's because we love the blues and grew up with it, and
Yep.
just because
Yeah.
we came from the other side of the pond. But ZZ Top, one of my favorite bands. They just play great.
They're a great band. They're a great band. So I want to end with an apology here. I have a very cheeky new novel coming out, as I said at the beginning. It from Renegade Press. It comes out in April. Titled "The Assassination of Baby Hitler: A Love Story." It's essentially I knew you would get a kick out of it, especially after the cover of Under the Influence, where you're kicking out at a wine cask. Um,
ZZ Top and Foghat were Slim Harpo fans.
uh-huh.
That's where that comes from.
Okay.
Playing the snare, Slim Harpo.
Uh-huh.
Long before Top and long before Foghat got together.
So
That's where we stole it from.
there you go. This novel is nerd romance, time travel, rock and roll, theoretical physics as a subtext. One of the threads argues free will through guitar rockers who wield their guitars to harness negative energy necessary to keep wormholes going open, which is my characters travel through time with. There is Michael Schenker, Jimmy Page, Al Stewart, Rick Derringer, Miles Goodwin from April Wine in the sequel, which is about Greta, the love interest to the physicist, the time traveling physicist. I need a new rock star, a new guitarist, and I'm thinking of Lonesome Dave.
Lonesome Dave would have loved that. He
Ooh,
was,
and I have no idea how I even overlooked him for the first novel.
When Dave got off stage, he was very quiet.
Yeah.
He loved to read, and we would share many stories, and he would turn me onto a lot of books, actually. But Dave was also into Marvel comics, all comics.
Okay. Yeah.
Heroes.
Wow.
Now, yeah, Dave was in fact when he got on stage.
Uh-huh.
Off stage, he was quiet. You know, he would have a glass of wine with us, and he and I appreciated fine wines, but he wasn't anywhere near like the nut job that some of us could become from time to time, and outrageous as we could be. Dave was a lot more.
Not wearing leopard skin jackets?
Yeah, in fact, he gave it to me one time. It wasn't real leopard skin, but he gave it to me. He said, "You want this coat, Roger?" I said, "Thanks, Dave."
You wore it
Dave,
well, man.
I'll give you an example.
All
When we
right.
were playing Savoy Brown, we were doing a show in the southwest of England. A band called Family was on the show as well.
Mm-hmm.
And they played, then we went on stage and we're playing. All of a sudden, the power keeps going off. And then I get the word from our road manager that there is a person off to my right up behind the stage who's turning the power on and off to let us know that we've got 15 minutes. Turned everything off. All the amps went off. And that's
Wow.
not, yeah, right. He did this 3 times. I got off my drums. I went up these stairs and confronted him, and I told him that if he ever does that again, I'll hang something on you and it won't be a fucking daisy chain. But with that, Dave's brother was his name was John, was our road manager, one of our road managers. We had 2. And all of a sudden there's a fight breaking out. It was in Southampton, I believe, south coast of England. His brother John is having a fight with some people down the front. With that, Dave takes his guitar off, jumps like some superhero into the fray.
Wow.
And Dave wasn't noted as a fighter, but somebody was fucking with his brother, so he was in there. Then I think somebody called the police. I remember grabbing somebody's pickaxe handle. The guy was just waving it around. He wasn't hitting anybody, but I figured we better take it away. It was nobody really got hurt, but that was typical Dave. He was a hero, and he would have been. He was a rock and roll hero, I think, for a lot of people. He was for me as well. He was every time we got on stage, it was nothing less than 110% with Dave. He lit up. He walked on stage, and it was full bar. He was he was great to play with, and it was always, you always knew it was going to be 110% with Dave. So there was no worries about somebody do it, having a tantrum or not being able to do this or do that. Dave lived for that sort of hour and 15, hour and a half. He was great to play with.
I think that gives me a lot to characterize Lonesome Dave in a novel about time travel.
Okay, here's another one for you.
Yes, sir.
Maybe a bit of inspiration.
Please, please.
As I said, Dave had all these Marvel comics, any kind of comic, but Marvel mainly, and he collected them. He didn't want to talk about it too much. It just on occasion, if I went to his house, he'd have all these comics, and they were all like in folders and like covered up. And when we were in Savoy Brown, he gave everybody nicknames. That there was an instrumental we did. It was called The Incredible Gnome. That would be Kim meets Jack's Man. Now that was Dave because his dad's name was Jack and Dave's middle name was Jack. So he would be Jack's Man, Lonesome Jack's Man against the Incredible Gnome. It was an instrumental. Chris Jordan, apparently Dave suggested that Chris should actually be Luther Foghat. That's the first time I heard the word.
Wow.
Didn't think too much of becoming Luther Foghat because he was Chris Jordan. I was Skins Willie. I don't know why I got that, but that was my thing. But none of them ever really stuck. But he was Lonesome Dave. That was his moniker, Lonesome Dave. He came from the Thames Delta.
Uh-huh.
That's right.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant.
We wrote a song on Family Jewels. I started it off, and Charlie had a lot to do with some of the lyrics as well. Charlie and I came up with the title Thames Delta Blues. It was about Dave.
I'll send you a copy of the book when it's done.
Oh, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, you can let me know. You can let me know how I did. Rock and roll has been a cornerstone of my life, but as theoretical physics has been and art, but that's absolutely brilliant. Foghat will be performing in St. Charles at the Arcada Theater for an 8 p.m. show on Saturday, December 2nd. Foghat just released its 17th studio album, Sonic Mojo, which we didn't cover nearly enough. This is a great, great album. A very, very strong album. The website is Foghat Official at foghat.com, as well as on Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. And you're the only band that I can think of that has their own wine label, right?
I think the Stones had one for a while.
Okay.
Yeah, no, we make myself and our manager. She's in charge.
Yeah,
she's in charge of everything. I just play the drums, and I'm well behaved, not relatively well behaved.
Well, let me ask you this, because we don't want to miss any marketing opportunities. No. Will you be selling Foghat wine at the venues?
No, we're not allowed to. We can't. It's shipping wine. It comes under the order of tobacco, firearms, and liquor.
Yeah.
Tobacco, I mean, that's bad for you. Firearms is okay as long as you know what you're doing with them. Alcohol, we'd be nothing without it.
Yeah.
Wine, back in the early days when this country was formed, they couldn't drink the water most of the time because it was too dirty. So they'd make beer.
That was the world over, brother.
And of course, some brilliant Americans came up with the idea of bourbon, mostly corn. And they used to trade liquor. That was their trade: liquor, sheep, cows. Bourbon was.
But ale was on British ships for centuries. Ale was the staple.
Well, yeah. I mean, you want to have a couple of drinks if you're out, away from home for 6 months.
Yeah.
Master and commander of the other side.
Yeah, it's got carbs and a little vitamin C and
feel good. as you go to sleep.
Roger Earl, what a pleasure, man. This was absolutely brilliant. I wish I had another 10 or 12 hours to adequately cover the just the bullet points on your career. But you know, I guess an hour and a
Thank
half
you,
to
Bill.
do, and
Thank you, Bill. I've had a good time.
it was a great time. Thank you again. And let me just do this.